my name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So, this is my first video, obviously. On this channel, I'm basically going to just be making some videos about my favorite TV shows, movies, my favorite music, musicals, just anything like that. To get to know me a little bit, my favorite movie is Wicked, both the musical and the movie I love. I love mysteries, psychological thrillers, but also just fantasy. In terms of music, I'm a huge fan of pop music in general, but I love all of the pop girls like Ariana Grande, Sabrina Carpenter, Carly Rae Jepsen, Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, Selena Gomez, anyone like that. So if any of that interests you and you also love that type of content, then maybe consider sticking around for more of my videos. But of course, as you can tell by the title, for my first video, I will be talking about the 5th episode of the 2nd season of School Spirits, which is an amazing show on Paramount Plus, and it's my favorite show, and I'm so excited to talk about it, so let's get into it. First, I just want to say, major spoiler warning, of course, if you have not seen School Spirits up till the latest episode, season 2, episode 5, but if you have, then let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to start out by talking about the plot. So I'm going to talk about some of the most important plot points and just some of my favorites. Okay, so first we have Quinn and her key. So Quinn tries to see if her mellophone is the key to her hellscape, but it doesn't work. This is just very interesting to me because it makes me wonder what her key could be, or if she even has a hellscape. I'm just wondering if this will be important for future episodes, or if this will come into play for some reason. Like maybe Quinn will find her hellscape and then find out information or something to help the rest of the crew. I heard some people say that they think maybe she couldn't get in since all the bus crash kids died together, that maybe they would have to all go and try to go into the hellscape together. So that's kind of interesting. And then of course we see Rhonda finds Mr. Martin's watch. So talking about Maddie a little bit, she is struggling with the fact that her mom is finally being the perfect mom, but not while she is around. We've seen so much that Maddie has gone through since the first episode of season 1, and just to see what she went through with her mom, and then her having to watch her mom finally do these things that she's always wanted, but someone else is in her body. And then later on, when she's talking to Wally and Charlie, she says she thinks they need to reverse engineer what happened that day and recreate the circumstances. In this show, they don't usually just like say something for no reason, so I feel like this might be important. Maybe that will be something that they have to do in the end once they hopefully get Janet back into the school, is maybe they will have to like go back down into the boiler room where it all began. But of course, Wally points out that it will be very hard to get Janet back in the boiler room because of all the trauma she has there. So this was one of my favorite scenes in the episode, was this, I'm calling it the United Nations scene because this is what some of the cast members have nicknamed it in some of the interviews that I've seen. It is just so crazy seeing, you know, these two different groups like kind of coming together. And something about the pictures of the ghosts on the chairs just like broke my heart. It's sad to me to think to these living kids, all these ghosts are just pictures on a chair, and like they only know them as just these people that have been dead for decades. But of course we know the ghosts so well, like it's just so sad. I love when Simon is saying it's nice to finally meet them, and Wally tries to fist bump him and misses. And then one of my favorite quotes from this episode was when Claire is saying, I can't wait to graduate from this creepy school, and then Wally says, you've been here like 4 years, babe, try 40. And then, of course, we have a little funny moment with Xavier thinking that pouring salt on Janet is gonna do something. So now we have Rhonda and Quinn. Rhonda gets very upset at Quinn for showing interest in the Son Foolish girl. This may be an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but I'm actually not a huge fan of Rhonda and Quinn's, like, dynamic. And here's why. I love both of them as characters. I mean, sometimes I do get a little bit frustrated with Rhonda because of instances like this. Rhonda just is excessively rude to her, in my opinion. Like, I know obviously Rhonda's gone through so much, but I don't know, I just feel like Quinn just has such pure, just good intentions. I know some people think that she's gonna turn out to be evil or something, but I don't think that. And how could Quinn know, the story about the Son? So I just feel like Rhonda did not have to lash out at her like that. I also thought it was sweet when Quinn says maybe we've all been looping on the wrong things, because obviously that can be kind of applied to pretty much any character in this show, so I just thought that was a nice little quote. So now we have Yuri finally leaves the pottery studio, and we find out he knows a lot about chemistry, and he also mentions the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So I thought I would just point this out because this is a philosophical book from the 70s, and obviously I feel like there's a lot of philosophical sentiments in this show. So yeah, it could just be a nod to that, or I don't know if it will come back in some way. But he says the formulas Mr. Martin's writing about are connected to serotonin and dopamine, and he says feelings are powerful. If he manipulated that, he could carve out open access points. So that's very interesting. Obviously, we don't really know right now what exactly Janet and Mr. Martin were doing with all the experiments and everything. Yuri says he diagnosed himself with anxiety from medical books in 8th grade, and we finally find out how he died, which was that he had a panic attack in the greenhouse that triggered his asthma, which is a little bit of a similar death to Charlie. And then skipping forward a little bit to near the end of the episode, when Charlie says, should we look for Maddie and Wally? And Yuri says, maybe they don't want to be found. I didn't until I did. Thank you for that, by the way. And I just wrote cute because I love Charlie and Yuri. And he says, big emotions stir up biochemical reactions. Suddenly the ground shifts, planets align, people feel the need to be real. I do feel like that quote could be very much related to everything at hand with Mr. Martin and Janet, once again with the experiments. And then I just wrote Charlie and Yuri, yay, once again, because I love them, and I love Charlie, and I love when he's happy. So this scene was very interesting, the hellscape. So I know they made it seem like Maddie was going into Janet's hellscape, but I've been thinking, and I've seen a lot of people think this too, that maybe it's actually Mr. Martin's, because there's lots of mentions of achievements that could have happened if Janet survived, like her lab coat says PhD, it says MIT class of 1962, Nobel Prize winner, and then of course we have the dead version of seemingly Janet saying I was robbed. And I just feel like it would honestly make more sense if that was Mr. Martin's, because he would probably be haunted by feeling guilty for causing Janet to die so young and not be able to achieve these things. And I feel like it would be weird if, like, Janet in her own hellscape had a version of herself telling herself I was robbed, because I feel like she knows she was robbed. And then here I just have Janet trying to act like Maddie is super creepy because, her looking at her videos and copying her laugh and everything. I hate it. Then we have Nicole visiting Eugene Bergstrom. When she's asking him about Janet, he says, you want me to say something I shouldn't? I said everything I needed to. Nobody wanted to hear it back then, and they don't want to hear it now. So that's very interesting to me, because why would people not want to listen to someone's account of a tragedy? And then, of course, we get this little flashback of Mr. Martin. He's very aggressive. He's been asked to leave in 2 weeks' time. I'm guessing, and a lot of people are guessing, probably because of Janet's dad. He probably kept his threat. But he says, this is the best thing that could have happened. I'll finally be able to realize my potential. I can be somewhere where my passion for what I do won't be disparaged or punished. This makes me wonder, is he just saying this, now that he's been fired, or has there been other things happening recently that has made him feel not respected in some way or looked down upon? And could that contribute to his later actions? And then Eugene says, following Monday he was there, but he really wasn't, barely spoke to Janet. I put away everything having to do with that fire and locked it up in my storage locker here. I can't live with it anymore. And when Nicole asks, do you think your teacher set the fire? He said, Janet and Mr. Martin were very meticulous. Neither one of them would have made that kind of mistake. That could imply either Eugene thinks a third party was responsible for this, or he's saying they were so meticulous that one of them or both of them must have said it on purpose, because they wouldn't have done that by accident. And then we have Nicole figuring out that she's been texting Xavier because he said something about the salt. I'm sorry, I just don't really care for this plotline. I just feel like Xavier's been shipped now at this point with like almost every girl in this series and everything, and I don't know, just not a huge fan. So the dinner scene, obviously this was a huge deal. It is so crazy seeing them all at this dinner. It just feels like the whole show has been like leading up to this moment, you know, like them seeing her, but of course it's not really her, and it's such a weird situation. They take that awkward photo, and Janet's saying we should make faces like we made on the Thunderbolt, which is, oh my god, so creepy. And I also just have to say, Peyton List is such a good actress. The way that she is able to do Janet's mannerisms, and she really makes you feel like it's a different person. It's actually crazy. She gives her little creepy apology about, sorry I scared you all and everything. And they give their little fake science department story to try to bait her, and she does blow her cover a little bit by correcting them with a scientific fact. And then we learn that Sandra says she wants to do the rest of the year online, which obviously is going to make everything a lot more difficult. And we have Xavier with his salt obsession again. That was a funny moment. But oh my gosh, when Nicole literally just flat out says Eugene Bergstrom misses you, and when Xavier looks at the picture of Maddie's dad and realizes that that was the fisherman that he saw in the hospital, that was wild. I was not expecting that at all. I'm very curious to see how that's going to come back into the plot line. And we have Simon confronting Janet, which was so crazy, and Janet just is terrifying in this scene. And we have the pool scene. I know this is, so many people were talking about this, but I just love this scene so much. I thought it was so cute. I am a big Maddie and Wally shipper, so I did love it for that reason, but I also just thought it was a really well done scene. The way she talks about feeling almost as if Janet deserves to live more because she like knew what she wanted to do from a very young age, and she was very scientifically gifted. It just breaks my heart because I feel like that's such a relatable feeling, like feeling inadequate for not knowing what you want to do with your life. But the way that Wally comforts her is so sweet, and Wally's my favorite character. I love him so much. And I wrote this quote that he said because I thought it was a beautiful quote. He said, "Some people are destined to do big things, that's great, but the rest of us, we carry the small gifts. That's just as important to the people whose lives we touch." And then he says, "Believe me, Maddie, I wish you would be stuck with me forever, but you deserve to live." And that almost made me cry because that's the hard thing with this show, is I've also become so attached to the ghosts that I almost don't like want her to leave them, and it's so sad to think about the possibility of them not seeing each other again. And I also just wanted to point out the song that they used, Let Go by Juliana Madrid. I just thought it was beautiful. I love when it says beauty in the breakdown, because I feel like that's such a good sentiment almost for this scene, but also kind of the whole episode and almost the whole show. And finally, we have discovering that Mr. Martin did possess Mr. Anderson's body. I did predict this, and I feel like a lot of people did. I just have to say, I love when they do subtle, like, foreshadowing, because there was a lot of moments where they were chasing after Mr. Martin in the earlier episodes, and then he would go into the hellscape, and it would close up on Mr. Anderson's name tag, and it would, like, linger there for a little bit. When Maddie asks him how long he's been here, he says, "I don't know, it feels like an eternity, because I took one box down and I put it in the car and I came up to pack this box, but this box, it just won't pack." And obviously that's probably because he keeps trying to pack his box and then it keeps resetting. And then, oh my gosh, seeing Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body talking to Sandra was so creepy, just like Janet. And also the actor who plays Mr. Anderson, I give him so much props too, because he did Mr. Martin's little mannerisms so well. It freaked me out so bad. I wrote here specifically when when he's talking about Fahrenheit 451 and he says, "I know how much she loves her twisted characters." If you go back and watch that, specifically the way he says twisted characters, to me sounds so much like Mr. Martin, like the way he would say that, and oh my god, it's so creepy. And then of course we have Janet getting kidnapped at the end, probably by Mr. Martin. I know some people speculate it was Simon or someone like that, but I do think it was probably Mr. Martin. Okay, so now I'll be giving a little review of the episode. I just give this episode 10 out of 10. Like I said, I just thought it was a perfect episode. I think this might be my favorite episode of the entire series so far. It was so good. Yeah, I just feel like so many exciting things happened. Like literally not a moment was like wasted. So my highlights of this episode are the United Nations scene, the Yuri and Charlie content that we got, the Hellscape scene, so cool. Nicole and Eugene Bergstrom, I thought that was very interesting. You know, seeing her literally talk to someone who knew Janet and everything. The dinner scene, of course. I mean, I feel like, you know, that's kind of the centerpiece of this episode. The pool scene, and obviously, you know, Mr. Anderson slash Mr. Martin. Okay, so now is going to be the little section where I talk a little bit about the editing and cinematography. So I'm just gonna talk about a few little moments that I just thought were really cool. I love in the very beginning when, you know, Maddie's like throwing around all the food and then it pans back out and then, you know, everything reset and it's all clean. I just thought the way that that was shot was really cool. And I also love in the United Nations scene where, you know, like they show the pictures on the chairs and then they pan back to it and then like they're all sitting on the chairs. This is just like a thing honestly for like the whole show, but I do always find it very cool when they do these kind of like unsettling angles. It kind of like subconsciously gives you this unsettled, like weird, you know, mysterious feeling. And then I also love in that scene where Simon's talking to Janet and it really focuses on Janet like cutting the pie once again. The way that it's shot and everything, it just adds to that tension of the scene. I'm going to be talking about some theories. Some of these are going to be ones that I have thought of or things that I've seen a lot of people say on Reddit, or some of these are very specific ones that I am going to shout out the person on Reddit who said it. So a big theory that a lot of people have is that Maddie's body is actually like technically dead or like dying, because when she hit her head, like she did hit it really hard in the boiler room. And like a lot of people think that maybe the only thing that's like keeping it alive right now is the fact that Janet's spirit went into her body like right before she hit her head, when she's like taking a bath and then there's like all the blood and everything. And you know, people have kind of mentioned like that's kind of weird because it's been like a month at this point, like the blood would probably be like dried, you know. Or Maddie's body is kind of like rejecting Janet's like soul because it can almost like sense that she's not supposed to be there. A lot of the writers and like cast members have said that the ending is like very emotional of this season, and like apparently Peyton List like cried when she read the finale. And I forget who, I don't know if it was the actor who plays Simon or if it was one of the writers that apparently said the ending is imagine the worst thing happening and then worse than that. So obviously I do not know what that means, but you know, that could play into it, because if she can't actually get her body back, like obviously that could be like the worst thing happening. So this person on Reddit had a theory, maybe like once again another like really sad thing that could happen was if Simon like sacrifices himself in some way for Maddie. This is a very interesting theory and I would definitely not be surprised if this turns out being true. This person on Reddit had a theory that maybe, you know, something that happened with the fire, there was something supernatural involved in it. Maybe a ghost possessed Janet and then Eugene like saw Janet's body leave, or when she died he could see her ghost because they were close friends like Simon and Maddie. And or I don't know, just like something supernatural happened with the fire and maybe that's why no one believed him or whatever. Like I feel like that would make a lot of sense if it was something supernatural. A big theory that I see a lot of people have is that like Mr. Martin and Janet were somehow responsible for all the deaths of the other ghosts at the school, because you know, a lot of people joke about how like why have there been so many deaths at this school, and I don't know, like part of me does think that might just be one of those things you kind of just have to like suspend your disbelief a little bit. I do think it's very interesting how, you know, the town and the school is literally called Split River, which is like you know, it almost makes you think, like, is there something about this town that makes, you know, more of these deaths happen, or something like that. I don't know, that would just be very interesting. Or like maybe that's why there's the whole thing of like you're in this purgatory where you're like stuck in the place, because maybe there's something like about this town that's like haunted in some way or something. Maybe Janet's dad had something to do with the fire, or Mr. Martin's fiance that he briefly mentions. We saw how much of a temper Janet's dad could have. And this person on Reddit had an interesting theory that maybe destroying the keys is what helps you cross over. I don't know, like I keep not quite understanding like what, like the hellscapes are so cool, but I'm kind of like, what is it gonna have to do with what's happening? So it would be kind of interesting if there is like a deeper purpose to the keys and the hellscapes than just like re-traumatizing all the ghosts. Now, the rest of these aren't really like theories, they're more just like observations that people have made that I think are interesting. So this person pointed out how both the people who have been possessed, Maddie and Mr. Anderson, were both kind of upset about like a similar thing as the person who possessed them. So, for example, like Maddie, when she was getting possessed by Janet, she was upset about the fact that she would maybe not be able to go to college anymore because her mom spent her college fund. And obviously we know Janet was upset that she possibly couldn't go to college because of her dad. And then same thing with Mr. Anderson was upset about getting fired, and then Mr. Martin was upset about getting fired. Someone else mentioned how both of the possessions happened in Scar. Maddie got possessed in the boiler room, which obviously was where Janet and Mr. Martin died, and then Mr. Anderson got possessed in his classroom, which used to be the guidance office where Rhonda died. And it makes me wonder if that is going to be like one of the rules that Mr. Martin and Janet figured out about possession, if in order to possess someone it has to be in one of the rooms where someone died. It's kind of interesting, there's kind of these connections to other stories. There's kind of this Fahrenheit 451 connection. Obviously they've mentioned it a couple times, like Janet checked it out apparently like 5 times, and obviously there's a big like motif in general of like fire in this show, specifically with Janet and Mr. Martin. Fahrenheit 451 is all about like futuristic time where books are being burned. Someone else pointed out that in Fahrenheit 451 there's a character named Clarice who they specifically mention in the Wikipedia pages 1 month short of her 17th birthday. In the pool scene, Maddie says to Wally, for God's sake, Wally, she wasn't even 17. So it's like a similar, you know, wording talking about those characters. And like Clarice is described to be an outcast in this town because she's very like imaginative and she like is interested in the books and stuff, which obviously that's like very taboo at this time. And obviously Janet was kind of similar, like she was, you know, a girl that was very interested in science in the 50s, which, you know, at the time that was not very common for girls to do. So they're kind of similar in that way. And in both, like in Fahrenheit 451, the main character, Guy Montag, you know, it's like this young man who then meets Clarice and, you know, is kind of interested in how different she is from everyone and everything. And once again, I feel like that kind of mirrors like Mr. Martin being interested in how different Janet is from a lot of the students and this intelligence that she has. So once again, I don't know how, you know, if this is just, you know, they're just using the book to allude to the fire and everything, or if there is going to be like a deeper like connection to it. I'm not sure. And then finally, there's also kind of a connection to Frankenstein, because they did mention Frankenstein a couple times in season 1, because that was, I think, the last book that like Maddie had to read for the class before everything happened. In that, it's a similar thing where there's like these two characters that are kind of both like antagonists in a way, because I know there's a lot of discourse right now about like who's the real villain, is it Janet or Mr. Martin or whatever. I feel like it's not really just like a black and white of like one of them is the villain, because obviously they've both like done bad things. Like obviously Janet has gone through a lot and was very traumatized, but you know, she's also now like taking someone's body and backing into them with someone else's truck and committing arson and everything. So obviously she's not like 100% good either. Because also in Frankenstein, both the doctor and the monster, they kind of cause each other to, you know, make certain rash decisions and stuff. And so I feel like it could be a similar thing where Janet and Mr. Martin kind of caused each other to make certain mistakes. Like, Mr. Martin could kind of represent the Doctor, who creates this monster that ends up kind of, you know, obviously becoming more powerful than the Doctor. But once again, it could be a similar thing where he kind of had this, like, friendship with Janet because of how passionate Janet was about science, but then Janet almost became possibly, like, more intelligent than Mr. Martin, and that could kind of be why all this stuff has happened, and why Mr. Martin, like, locked her in the boiler room and everything, because he almost realized that she was almost becoming more smart than him, and he kind of, like, needed her to fulfill these experiments and everything that he wanted to do. Okay, so finally I'm going to end off this video by talking a little bit about what we can maybe expect from the next episode. In this little teaser that they give on Instagram, they say Maddie's kind of like connecting the dots on the map. What does that mean? And then of course we're going to see Wally's class of 1984 reunion, which Yuri and Charlie will be going to together. We're pretty sure that the living crew is going to follow Mr. Martin to the cabin. I mean, obviously we don't know for sure if Mr. Martin was the one that kidnapped her, but once again, I'm relatively sure that that's probably what happened. And we know that Simon is gonna confront Janet again, but trying to be more gentle this time, because I watched a little Q&A and Simon kind of mentioned that. These are some screenshots from the season 2 trailer, and as you can see in these photos, they are wearing the same outfits as they were in this past episode. We see Xavier, someone like puts their hands over his mouth. I'm assuming that's probably Mr. Martin, but obviously we don't know for sure. And then also we can expect, of course, the ghost explaining to Mr. Anderson what happened to him, which is going to be very interesting to see. Obviously it's gonna, I don't know how Mr. Anderson's gonna take this news. I do also think it's gonna be cool to see how Maddie's gonna kind of have someone to like relate to in this very unique situation of someone possessing them. Apparently it is called Ghost Point Blank. And the little synopsis is Maddie and the ghost find a link between their scars, and tensions rise between Simon and his team at a remote cabin. Something that the show does is they send a lot of like PR packages to some influencers and stuff, and they always give little clues for the next episode. So the clues from this episode are, first of all, this little name tag that says, "Hello, my name is Ted Lambert," and this looks like it's going to be someone at the Wally's reunion, and I'm assuming maybe it'll be someone Wally was friends with or something, I don't know. There's a rope, which, I don't know, I feel like that might just be from the cabin, like Mr. Martin tying Janet up or Xavier up or something. There's a pen, which I feel like might just be from Maddie and the ghost apparently, you know, drawing on the map and finding a link between their scars. There are mini golf balls, which this is the one thing that's like completely stumping me. Once again, leave any guesses if you have one down below, because I have no clue what that is going to be. There's a little like bracelet, and apparently it's giving a donation to LGBTQ plus youth, which is amazing. But I do think maybe that is just a hint towards, you know, us getting more Yuri and Charlie content. But finally, the most interesting thing to me is there's this little flower, and people have pointed out they think that this looks like a marigold, which is often associated with the Day of the Dead. So then it made me realize that there are also these clips from the trailer where it shows Maddie walking into this room that seems to have all these flowers in it that look like the marigolds. So I do think we're probably going to get these clips in this next episode, which I'm very excited about because I've been so curious about this. But I have no clue. Obviously, it kind of looks like a hellscape because it's like all red, but I don't know, you know, whose hellscape would have a bunch of marigolds in it. Someone mentioned how they think this room might be a dark room, which is used to develop photos, because also there seems to be a lot of photos hanging up. I don't know, once again, what that would have to do with anything, but I guess we will find out. One last quick little thing is that in the IMDb for the episode, apparently there's a character named Alice mentioned. Shout out to Media Melanie Talks TV on YouTube, who, by the way, love your videos. She kind of mentioned how she thinks maybe this will be Mr. Martin's fiance, and maybe we'll get more flashbacks. So that is all I have for this video. I know it's probably going to be a little bit of a long one, but I needed to talk about everything because I feel like there was so much information in this episode. So definitely, if you have any theories or thoughts about anything I said in this video, or just anything else that I didn't mention, please leave it down below because I would love to hear what you have to say about it. I hope that maybe you'll stick around for more videos that I make in the future. Thank you for watching. Bye!